And a big welcome back. Happy New Year. Second Nature, Dylan Bowman, Aaron Lutzy back in this digital virtual studio together. Buddy, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Likewise, Happy New Year. The boys are back, classic bro pod style. Let's do this.
So back, rested, refreshed, and ready for year 2 of Second Nature. Going to be a big year. How were the holidays, dude? We got to see each other at least briefly. We had lunch with our good buddy Steve Holmberg at your favorite spot in Portland. How you doing?
Man, holidays were pretty good. I mean, honestly, I was sort of just on like stay-at-home dad mode for most of the time, which was great. Like, it's nice to get an opportunity to just take a deep breath, hang out with your family, not stress, even though there were plenty of things to be stressed about. Just kind of took it as easy as I possibly could. And I got to go see DJ Shadow with Egan, his first time seeing turntables in real life, which was pretty sick. So plenty of highlights. We snuck in like one more good memory before the year ended. Not mad at all.
Yesterday, you and I talked on the phone, and you said, I cannot wait for my kids to go back to school, for God's sakes.
Well, it's like one of those things where you're like planning out your year and you have like this general idea of what you want to try to like hit the ground running with. But then like it's in the planning, you've written it down, you've maybe made the calendar, you've maybe mapped some stuff out, but then you can't do anything about it. And so you're just like, okay, I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready. And yeah, my kids had like Monday off, which like it's the second week of January. Like, get these kids back in school.
Why wait till Tuesday? Come on. Anyway, yeah, I had a fantastic holiday too. Maybe we'll talk about it at the end of the show, but I went and did an incredible retreat and finally punched out of work for the first time really in Free Trail and Second Nature's existence. And boy, did I need it. And boy, do I feel a lot better. But dude, the purpose of today's show, Aaron, is to get back together, reflect a little bit on 2024. Obviously, this isn't a novel concept. Podcasters around the world, do their retrospectives and in some cases do sort of award shows. And we figured that maybe we take some of our frameworks and rubrics that we apply to Second Nature and do a retrospective for 2024. So we were thinking maybe we would do brand of the year, product of the year, content of the year, athlete of the year, maybe some personal wins and losses. Maybe we could even go a little bit further. Galaxy brain of the year, business is hard of the year. We'll see where this episode goes. But anyway.
Dude, honestly, 24 was a huge year in terms of just learning stuff. And this podcast had a huge impact on that. The amount of people that we got to talk to, the discussions that we had, the people that talked to us offline about stuff. I just felt like I had a huge year just gaining new knowledge that it didn't have access to. And it seems like a lot of people had that. And hopefully we contributed to that through this podcast as well.
Dude, I'm so pumped on Second Nature. And I have to say, the last couple episodes have been absolutely fire. So to our listening audience, it may not be totally obvious, but Aaron and I haven't caught up in a long time, at least in this format. I was away on retreat. Aaron, as he has been for much of the year, shouldered the burden for Second Nature. And the predictions pod that you did with Trappy and Holmberg was fantastic. The Paradigm episode, also ridiculous. In fact, I called you while I was listening to it because it was so good just the other night. And in general, you're killing it as a podcaster. And we're going to try and figure out this year how to balance things out so that you aren't carrying the team so much in 2025.
I needed reps, though, to be honest. I mean, you've been in the podcast game for a really long time. You've interviewed like hundreds, maybe thousands of people at this point. Like, you've had a minute to kind of hone your craft, and I've always sort of felt like I'm trying to catch up. And sure, I've done the YouTube thing. I've talked to the camera a lot, but having to actually interact with people in a semi-live setting and keep the questions fresh and keep the conversation moving, it is a real skill. And there's not any way to really learn it other than to do it. And so if anything, this past year was my chance to sort of like play a little catch up. And I think those conversations really helped me get to where I am now. And I, still have a long, long way to go. But if we're on equal footing, that'd be pretty great.
Well, you are a natural. And this being Second Nature, you being a second naturalist, launching into our award show, which we are ridiculously and comedically calling the Nachi Awards. Is that what we're going with? Is that the brand, Lutzi?
Until we've come up with something better. Why not?
To our Second Nature listeners and community, drop a note in Slack and come up with a better award show name than the Nachis. Kicking things off, brand of the year, Lutzi, you get us started. 2024. Who won? Who was the best brand in the outdoor industry?
I mean, look, that's a really, really big ask. And I don't think there's any way to truly do that justice. And so, sort of the filter that I used was also trying to figure out who deserves a little bit of shine that maybe we haven't talked about on this pod yet. And the brand that I really admire and that I've been having a blast watch is this brand called Skratch. A lot of people already are well aware of Skratch. But what I think really stands out is just how well they're doing their job. When you think about it, you and I talk a lot about people who are practitioners of the craft, and Alan Lim, who founded Skratch, is like super into exercise physiology, and he's a chef, and he does all these things that sort of revolve around nutrition and food and fueling for workouts and stuff like that. And in that space of CPG, you could see any number of brands just like charging towards acquisition of like, we know what the formula is to get the job done here. And I don't really see Skratch doing that. I see them like doing everything right, where absolutely, I'm sure they've entertained plenty of offers at this point, and who knows what's going on in the background. But it looks like they're having a really fun time. It looks like they're just dedicated to this craft. And I'm just in awe of just, they kind of keep it real, and they're just focused on doing good when it comes to providing product, to making the right stuff, but also to kind of having fun as they build that brand. So I don't know. I just have like a lot of admiration for Skratch. I kind of always have, but it just continues. And they could have made so many moves to basically sell out immediately. Yep. I'm sure there's a long list of people who would be willing to pick them up. But I just, respect.
It's a great example of the infinite game, isn't it?
Yeah.
We got to have Alan Lim on the pod. He came to a North Face Athlete Summit when I was on the TNF team probably 6-7 years ago. And he regaled us with incredible stories of the heyday of sort of the doping era in cycling. Alan Lim has incredible stories of what it was like in the sport at that time, but he has been a transformative mind in the world of sports nutrition, building his brand in probably the most competitive category in the entire outdoor industry, and doing so with integrity, as you said. And I know that they have had interest in investment and acquisition, and that he does have kind of a philosophical position against doing stuff like that. They're privately held. I think they're, mostly independently owned and employee owned. So that would be a fun story to tell here on the podcast. A worthy contribution for brand of the year.
Absolutely.
How about they do it. Actually, another thing on them, which I think our audience will find interesting, is they're doing things differently in other ways. They opened a cafe in Boulder, Colorado. Did you know that?
I saw that. Yeah. I was looking at the menu earlier today.
my friend Ellie Pell, who's a professional trail runner, was the manager. She has gone back to graduate school to pursue her own career and her own education, but she managed it and got the cafe off the ground when it was opening. And in conversation with her, it's really interesting just to hear about how that fits into the overall business plan and, just community building and all the things that we talk about on the podcast a lot. So that's pretty cool. And next time in Boulder, I want to go check it out.
Yeah. All right. What do you got? What's your brand of the year?
Okay. I had to go with Hoka. Okay. We've talked about Hoka on the pod, but we haven't done like really a deep dive on them. But in my community, in the sport that I am most involved with, they are on fire, head and shoulders above every other brand, just in terms of their impact on trail running specifically. Over a $2 billion brand now. Last quarter, they did $570 million in revenue, and they really do own trail running, and they do it in a good way. I feel like they are the title sponsor of the Western States 100. Of course, I am on the board of that organization, and so I have a front row seat to just see the principles and ethics they bring to that partnership and the support that they bring to that race. And like, it's not private information to say that without Hoka's support, Western States wouldn't be in as healthy of a position as they are now. In fact, the belt buckles that you get for finishing Western States alone are more expensive than the registration fee. Western States operates as a nonprofit, so effectively they if all the registration revenue is going towards the purchase of these belt buckles, then you need a lot of supportive sponsors in order to keep the ship afloat. And Hoka is basically the brand that helps Western States maintain its leadership position in the sport and maintain its ethics and its integrity in the way that Western States does. Of course, they're also the title sponsor of the entire UTMB World Series, including UTMB Mont Blanc, the unofficial Super Bowl of trail running that happens at the end of the summer every year. Plus, they've got like the best athlete team in the sport with Jim Walmsley, Esther Chilog, Fuzhou Zhang, Hayden Hawks, Adam Peterman, Rod Farvard, yada, 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 like the stars of the stars, and they treat their athletes really well too. And the other reason I wanted to put them in here, aside from, as we mentioned in our post-UTMB podcast, them winning Debo's extremely correct athlete kit rankings of UTMB 2024. The story of Vincent Bouillard winning UTMB, one of the great sporting stories of the year in 2024. So just a recap for our audience: Vincent Bouillard, a French materials engineer, an employee of Hoka, came out of nowhere, shocked the world, won UTMB, the biggest race, the biggest stage in the world, a totally unknown Hoka employee beating all the Hoka athletes to win the race in a race that was sponsored by Hoka. So, and just the momentum and growth behind the brand right now, and just the style with which they approach the sport. I wanted to give special recognition to Hoka, brand of the year for me.
I've got to ask you a question, because obviously I have run ultras. I've run ultra marathons wearing Hokas. Big shout out to Tim who hooked me up. But the question I want to ask you is, like 5 to 10 years ago, I remember seeing Hoka, and this brand had kind of like, these are weird shoes. They're real tall. Like, look how thick that sole is. And it did not seem immediately obvious to me at the time that this would be one of like the top challenger brands in the footwear space at any time soon. This seemed like the most niche, ridiculously, shoe that you could possibly put on your feet. And the question I want to ask you is, was it immediately obvious to you as someone who's in that scene that like, oh yeah, Hoka is going to like take over everything? Or is this sort of like a surprise entry into the challenger category? And obviously it's become more obvious in the last couple of years, but were you just as surprised as anybody else?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I didn't have my finger on the pulse of like the industry elements of the sport when Hoka was introduced, but your point is well made in that it's a $2 billion+ brand now, and it's only 15 years old. Like, it has grown so quickly, so fast, and their impact has been immense. But you're right. The original product everybody looked at and felt was borderline ridiculous looking. But maybe that's the lesson, right? If this was a Harvard Business School case study, it's about differentiation, and they were very differentiated. And I think they sort of created their entire brand around comfort and cushioning without sacrificing performance. And they've held true to that. Something else that we've talked about on the podcast a lot is like not diluting what made you special in the first place. And I feel like they've done a good job of staying true to what got them noticed and what developed like brand affinity and product affinity in the first place. So I think just extremely well executed operation. They're now owned by the Deckers Corporation, which I think is close to $5 billion in total. So Hoka, I think, makes up about half of Deckers' overall revenue and market cap. So anyway, yeah, 15-year journey for Hoka, and they have been executing on all cylinders.
You know what's interesting about that is one of the biggest realizations that I had in general in 2024, and maybe this is slightly a hot take, but what I'm realizing is that brand and business are not always the same thing. And so this idea of brand for Hoka, of like what it looks like and how they message stuff versus like what the actual business is and how they're executing against that, can be completely different things. And, we talk about Red Bull on this podcast a lot because that's my 12-year, history with them. And a lot of people are very familiar with the brand of Red Bull, but the business of Red Bull is almost completely disconnected from the brand. And when I say that, I mean that the people who are in distribution for Red Bull are assassins. They are as good, if not better, than the people on the marketing side. And you don't necessarily see that or connect the dots between those two.
Yep.
But the reason why Red Bull can do all the crazy stuff that they do is because the people at the sales level are literally the best in the world at what they do. They can go into a 7-Eleven and be like, would you like to make more money every month? Move this one can over to here and then move this one down to here. And automatically they have like data, they have information, and they can like completely flip a business based on the insights that they have. That level of business is like doing a lot for the brand itself. And so a lot of what I'm seeing and what I'm kind of interacting with, and you can be really critical of a brand. Those shoes look weird versus the business of like, yeah, but their distribution is insane,
Yeah.
And so that's something like, as we look at more and more brands, as we kind of evaluate this stuff, I'm really going to do my best to break the two apart as much as possible and kind of evaluate each one independently. Now, I think to be a Red Bull, to be a Hoka, to be these like high functioning brands, you do have to do both brand and business well. But a lot of times I think we lump everything in together. And maybe like Outside as an example, we talked to Robin Thurston about that. A lot of people have an opinion about the brand of Outside and the specific sub brands within Outside, but do we really know what the business is? What is actually bringing in all of the revenue to make it make sense to those investors? I don't think it's necessarily brand love. It might actually just be how much people are paying to have access to Gaia or Runkeeper or whatever. Or Matt Might Run, sorry. But you know what I mean? Like there's
It's such a good point. It's such a good point. I think it's deserving of an entire episode of like, I mean, we've talked about what is the business as it pertains to both Freetrail and Super Rider, but as we said in the Speedlane episode, good product doesn't necessarily equal good business. And there are so many of those small decisions, as you mentioned with the examples of just like where you place the Red Bulls on the shelf, that with companies of that scale move 8 figures in revenue potentially, millions of dollars. Anyway,
go ahead.
I was gonna add an honorable mention, but go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, are you familiar with the concept of push and pull marketing? Does that ring a bell?
Go ahead.
Now I'm fully putting you on. Yeah. I'm putting both of us on the spot because I'm probably going to mess it up. But really, it
feels like this should be a full episode on its own too.
We could go there and get some other people to jump in. But basically, like just really super top line so we can keep it moving. It's really about like creating the conditions for anybody to potentially buy the thing, but then also pushing people in so that they go and search it out, right? Like that's the simplest version. And I think that's very congruent to this conversation of like business versus brand. Okay, let's move on to the honorable mention because we can have that conversation later.
Well, just quick honorable mention. I think Satisfy also is just one of those brands that had so much attention around it. And of course, the thing that's in the news right now is the Nike perceived copycat of Satisfy's MothTech t-shirts. Yep. I don't know how deeply we want to go into this, but it's an interesting, I think, example of some of the big incumbents noticing the, I guess the shift in customer affinity towards some of these newer, more innovative, more nimble players in the market and responding accordingly. I don't know. Yeah. I just felt like that was a big signal. Nike kind of doing the Satisfy playbook is, I think, representative of them noticing that their brand is less relevant, especially in their core market of running, where Satisfy is like really occupying a lot of the conversation.
Yeah. And to do it with a brand that's so, has captured the attention of so many high level runners, like that's not the brand you probably want to knock off right now. That makes you look pretty silly. I wonder if it's sort of one of the last L's that Nike's going to take now. I have a feeling with Elliott Hill in there, like they're definitely, kind of pausing, redirecting, rebuilding. And so, we know that the product lines that get launched have, an 18 to 24 month window. So they made that mistake two years ago to copy Satisfy, probably. And now, are they going to like, all right, timeout, and maybe
I'm rooting
that's
for him, man. I'm rooting for Nike to have a huge 25, and maybe they'll be a recipient of a Naichi award next year. Moving on, product of the year, Lutz, get us started.
Okay, we have to, and maybe this is a little bit of brand, but Raid absolutely killed it. They released the running belt. They have the ski backpack, both doing quite well, really capturing the attention of the core community. We had Kyle from Raid on the podcast early last year, and really kind of caught a lot of people's attention. And it continues to deliver on that, continues to grow. And I don't know, I'm just really excited about what they're doing. It's so cool to start with like such a cool product in mind and actually be able to execute on it and to see it out in the field. I mean, when we did that podcast, he was actually overseas developing the running belt. He had like a prototype that he showed me before the pod started, and then he released it, and people seem genuinely excited. I don't know. Do you have one of this yet?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. And Kyle, his episode has probably been one of, if not our most popular episode in Second Nature history, and it was very early. So to our new listeners, go back and search for that. Kyle Siegel, Raid Research, a really interesting up and coming outdoor brand. And it feels like sky's the limit for them, starting with equipment, backpacks, running belts, two products that, as I understand it, is, I mean, in the run space, definitely differentiated. And as I understand it, his ski backpack is like kind of a revolutionary innovation.
Yeah.
And then if you think about it, just how much opportunity there is to expand the collection, both in winter sport and summer sport, becoming like a 4 seasons mountain brand, and eventually going down funnel into soft goods and outerwear. And they launched like a touring ski pant, a bib, this season too. So anyway, Kyle's on a heater there too, and I think he's getting close to wanting to start building out a supportive team behind him. We talked on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and he was a little burnt out, and I was too at the time. So,
I mean, the brand of Raid is basically innovative product for people that care about endurance, whether it's in the winter or the summer. Like that's a brand right there.
Yeah, totally. Well,
you got?
Yeah, well deserved. I put the Garmin Enduro 3, which is the watch that I use when I run every day.
Mm-hmm.
Garmin makes the best GPS watches, hands down. And as I said to you before we started recording, of course, my Naichi awards are disproportionately focused on trail running and the products that I use. And this is like one of those products that is just indispensable to me. And once you use the Garmin Enduro, it's like I would have a hard time moving to any other brand or any other product. It's just like the mapping feature, the battery life, all the biometric tracking for people who are interested in that. As far as I understand it, it's pretty much as accurate as a Whoop or as an Aura. And you can, I think most people probably don't want to sleep with a big GPS watch on their wrist, but it has that functionality if you want it. Just a really, really great product, Garmin Enduro 3.
Cool. I've got an honorable mention for product as well, and that is the DJI Osmo
one.
Pocket 3. This thing is insane. This, for I think it's like $400 or $500, but this can do everything. Literally everything. You could run a YouTube channel, you could run all your Instagram, you could run everything off this one camera. The quality is ridiculous on this thing, and it fits in your pocket. Bonkers.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have actually been using that the last few days. We're rolling out our Trail Runner of the Year award right now for Free Trail, and we've been filming everything on that camera, plus the integration with the DJI microphones, creating one track, one file that I can then send to Ryan for him to create the beautiful reel that we end up posting on IG. What a great product. Amazing innovation. Yeah, like head and shoulders above a GoPro in terms of like functionality for a Luddite like me who's not like competent with cameras like you and Ryan are.
Ryan and I were on a shoot together in November, and we had the Ronin, we had the Mavic Pro 4, like we had all of the gear, right, that you could possibly ever want to make that piece. But the chunk that we used the most footage from was from that camera. This little $500 camera was like outclassing $4, 5, $6,000 cameras.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like if you were going to get one piece of kit that you were going to make content with, that would be it. A preview into my 2025 or whatever we're going to do next year. I'm actually kind of circling around the idea of the Insta360 X4, I think it's called. The idea of the 360 camera, I think there's something really fascinating there, because I've ridden with a lot of GoPro type stuff in the past, but a lot of times you want to show something else that's going on and you can't really get everything with it. I think there's something really interesting where 360 cameras have finally come into their place now, and I'm gonna do a little bit more with that this upcoming year. I haven't ordered it yet, but that's number one on my list of things to start messing with this year.
All right. Well, keep us posted.
Watch this space.
Could be a potential product of the year 25. Content of the year. You want me to get us started here?
Yes, please.
Okay. In the theme of trail running, because that's where I spend my life, Team Sport, a film that was made by Solomon about the great Courtney Dauwalter, came out in the summertime just before she won and set the course record at the Hard Rock 100 for the third time. And it's a great illustration of Courtney and her character and what makes her so special as a human being. Of course, she's a transcendent athlete, but I think the thing that everybody loves about her more is her humility and her refusal to accept kudos and admiration. And this film just kind of documents the team that she has around her that help her be as transcendently successful as she has been, which is a good segue to kind of my favorite content that we produced or that I was affiliated with of 2024. We did a live podcast with Courtney like 8 hours after she finished Hard Rock that year, last year. So 26 hours or so out on the course for Courtney, took a little nap, and then came and we did a live podcast at this local bar and hotel. And it was so fun, standing room only. She was totally gregarious and charming, not like ridiculously exhausted. Everybody loved it. And then she hung around with her whole family for like 3 hours, and we drank tons of beers, and everybody, it was just like highlight of the year for me in terms of like content production experience was the live podcast that we did with Courtney Dauwalter afterwards. Cool. And then my honorable mention, Super Rider. Just talked about John Paradine. You guys partnered up on the Where to Mountain Bike on the peninsula here in my area, in the Bay Area. And of course, my business partner, Ryan Thrower, collaborated on it. So extra special bonus points for that one. But I thought it turned out sick. And as I understand it, it feels like a model that Super Rider might scale in 2025. It felt like a great first effort there and something that's got a lot of legs.
Definitely a proof of concept. Yeah. Thanks for the honorable mention. Definitely a proof of concept. And I think, that's a lot of, I think we'll get to like kind of stuff we learned this year and what we plan for next year. I think I need to have a little bit more of a repeatable format that actually exists outside of the sponsorship model. And that feels like something that I could do a lot. And not only that, I got help for the first time ever. I had someone behind the camera helping me with the edit where I could just focus on doing a good job, as opposed to like stressing out on 50 different things all at once and then coming home and stressing out for another 2 weeks trying to turn it around and then coming up with maybe something that was good, maybe something that wasn't. Like that was best case scenario for me. Like put together a project, work with people that I care about, and then actually make something that's better than I could have done all by myself. Like more of that. Yes.
Remember when we did the brutal honesty evaluating each other's businesses, and my number one piece of feedback for you was like, you got to get some help. You got to get a bit of a team, but you've achieved so much as just a one-man show, a one-man creative media business. It's great to see you get that support. And I think it was reflected in the quality of the content that you put out there on the Super Rider channel. Athlete of the year. What do you got?
Okay. Oh, wait, I got content of the year still.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
No, you're good. Okay. Death Grip 2. This is a mountain bike film. It's Brendan Faircloth, who Brendan Faircloth is basically like, was a big time racer, got really into creating content. And he had a film called Death Grip many years ago. It was super popular. It's like a lot of racing and kind of just ripping in these like really beautiful locations. with like actual cinematography. And there's all kinds of like, you know, Red Bull films and stuff like this, but this is an athlete who like did that on his own with partners, obviously, but he really went out and made this thing. You can buy it on iTunes, which is like the fact that you can go to iTunes and buy a mountain bike film is pretty sick. And what's special about this is that it's really sort of like like a flagpole in the world. Like it's an actual piece of art. It's not just like another video that's on YouTube. This is like a movie that you can buy and watch. And I don't know, there's just something really special about the fact that like we can still have this level of stuff. Like I remember being a young kid and I had like the VHS tapes of, you know, Hans Rayer. Actually, I had like a Michael Jordan VHS tape when I was growing up. And I feel like these films still need to exist. And even though we can go to YouTube and distribution is easy there to get, you know, free views everywhere and to make a little bit of money on AdSense, the effort and the intention that goes into making an actual like cinematic film is meaningful. And I think that's why, I mean, yeah, the writing and cinematography and Death Grip's awesome and it's fun to watch. But the fact that they intentionally released it as a film instead of a YouTube video, there's something there that I really respect.
Love it. Love it. I need to check that out.
It's good. It's
I gotta
really
check
good.
that out. All right. I'll maybe Ryan and I'll make some popcorn and sit on the couch and watch it together and see if there's any Free Trail inspo in there.
Yeah, I think you know, our buddies from Free Fly have one of their drones in that film too. So yeah, have a look. But it's
Right.
incredible. You guys will love it. You're gonna be frothing. Like, yeah.
Death
I think
Grip.
I think
It's a
Ryan's
great
been
name too.
Ryan's been bit by the mountain bike bug, so just keep an eye on him.
Oh no. Oh no, we can't lose him. If you swooped my business partner, man, we'd have to close the shop immediately.
or like the biggest alliance of mountain biking and running of all time.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Ryan could be the catalyst.
Yep.
Anyway, okay, athlete. You want me to go first on this one?
Go ahead.
I've got kind of an outside pick here. I chose Seth Alvo from Berm Peak as my athlete of the year. And Berm Peak is like one of the biggest YouTube mountain bike channels that you can find. And Seth, for a long time, has made a lot of product review stuff. He's a great rider. He's gone to locations to ride. He's been, you know, kind of integrated in the fabric of mountain bike culture for a very long time. But something that really stood out this year was he lives in North Carolina, and we actually went and rode with him in North Carolina over the summer on that road trip that I did with my son. But then, as you know, Asheville got hit crazy hard with weather, and it was just like a complete, literal disaster. And that's Seth's backyard. I mean, literally, he lives just outside Asheville. And he had to sort of pivot his content to, you know, because you can't make mountain bike videos when like everything is gone upside down like that. And it was really interesting to get a look at what was happening on the ground there. And what Seth did was he took all the energy and the power that he'd built through his channel and directed it to fundraising support, directed it to sharing the stories on the ground, using it to help people in the area that needed help to get the job done. And just a ton of respect for somebody that can, you know, kind of put everything on hold and actually focus in on the task at hand and utilize what they've built for good in a meaningful way. You know, one of my other favorite athletes is Grant Puberry, is a gaming guy who's raised all kinds of money for Wings for Life. And the fact that people can actually not just be making content for their own ends, but also to benefit other people, like that hits a special spot with me. Yeah. One other thing that I've got to call out too with Seth and Berm Peak is that they were the ones that moved to Substack in the beginning of the year. And they brought, you know, Seth brought me along. And if I'm looking at the back end of my recommendations tab on the Super Rider Substack, I'm drafting off of Berm Peak in a major way. 2,416 subscribers to my newsletter came directly from Berm Peak. Now they have way more than I do, but just like the people that have come there to read what I'm writing also, like, thanks, Seth. And I've got to imagine some of those people have then made their way over to Second Nature as well. So we've all benefited from everything that Seth has done.
Yeah. So explain Berm Peak to me a little bit more. Is it a YouTube channel and a newsletter? Is it like sort of a free trail of mountain bike or?
Sort of. So it started out as a channel called Seth's Bike Hacks, and it was all these different bike hacks that he was, testing out different things and like doing janky setups and all kinds of, it was just fun YouTube content. And it was never really about being the best rider. It was just like about having fun on bikes and learning stuff. Like, oh, here's a little hack that you can use to fix your bike, or he would do all these different series and stuff like that. And he had a Patreon for a while and actually funded this bike park in North Carolina, which Tegan and I also rode when we were out there, through the Patreon support. But Patreon just wasn't really hitting for him. He had a bunch of people there that were supporting him, but he just kind of felt like it wasn't the right place to do what he wanted to do. And when Substack came around, he was like, I feel like instead of making stuff for the algorithm, I can make stuff and offer it up to this audience ahead of the release. And basically, if they're subscribed on the paid membership side, they can get access to it. And I can write stuff that they're essentially funding. They're going to fund the content instead of YouTube AdSense, which means that they're more locked in, they're more committed, they're actually going to see it, which is the big problem on YouTube. He saw a lot of solutions coming through Substack. So prior to Substack, they didn't do a newsletter, and it's not really a newsletter. It's just regular, stories and videos and previews of stuff that you will eventually see a couple weeks later on the Burn Peak channel. He saw Substack as a better way to communicate with your community than Patreon, basically. Yeah. And that's what brought him there.
Sounds like a perfect guest for Second Nature.
He'd be a good one.
All right, athlete of the year for me, again, sticking with trail running because I'm totally unoriginal and I didn't have a lot of time to put a deep thought into this. I wanted to, again, give a shout out to somebody who had a major impact in 2024, that being Katie Scheid. And she, for those who don't know, is an American. She lives in France and has for many years at this point, but a true pro's pro in the sport. And her approach is, I think, representative of this modern era, the sport, where it takes a clinical, surgical approach to what she does, but also, like all the great champions in trail running, has a really approachable and, feeling of being a normal person. like her, it doesn't feel as if she was imbued with some magical physiology or talent or whatever. Like, yeah, she's clearly incredibly talented, but she just takes her stuff seriously. She goes to work and she does incredible things. And this year she just ran 3 races, won all 3 of them in spectacular fashion. Most notably, she won both Western States and UTMB in the same summer, breaking Courtney Dauwalter's course record at UTMB. And she was about 15 minutes behind Courtney's course record at Western States. So when you're in that category, and breaking Courtney Dauwalter course records and coming close at other races to Courtney's marks, you are not only one of the best in the world at a current moment, but one of the best of all time. And coming back to this Western States UTMB double, Aaron, there's 2 people that have done it in one summer. Can you name the 2 before Katie that had done it? She's the 3rd.
Dude, you can't put me on the spot like that. Courtney's done it, right?
This is very easy. Yes, that's 1.
Yeah. Kilian?
There you go.
Oh,
so yes, again, a very small group of 3 people have won Western States and UTMB in the same summer. Wow. Katie Scheid did it this year and absolutely dominated both races. So, she is unequivocally in that category with Courtney, with Kilian, with Jim, with Francois as the premier champions of the sport. She's running Hard Rock for the first time next year, which everybody's exciting. Very excited about. So,
man, I don't really understand it. I mean, I've run plenty of trail races, but like I am a puddle after running even a 50-mile race. I can't imagine running, like, I don't even think I can make it through both those back to back, and then to be hyper competitive and winning both. I mean, that's like superhuman.
Yep.
Out of control. Yep. Okay. I've got kind of a weird honorable mention. I don't know how to really slide this one in there, but I want to make a point with it. It's not an athlete necessarily, but
let me guess. It's a content creator.
Maybe you might go there. This one's way, way outside. You're going to definitely give me a weird look on this one, but I want to make a point with it that is related to sports. Okay. 2024 was absolutely dominated by one person, not in sports, and it was Taylor Swift. But hear me out, hear me out, hear me out. Have you heard of the concept of monoculture?
Yes.
So Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, completely, like, you could not avoid
Yep.
Taylor Swift in 2024. And what it made me think of is this concept of monoculture has existed within sports at various points throughout our lives, but it's getting harder and harder to have that kind of like all-encompassing thing, right? Like, it used to be.
It's the nichification, it's the fragmentation of culture. Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, Taylor Swift kind of proved that it can still be done. Monoculture could still exist. I think it's a really, really big effort on both the athlete and the brand, but like a brand like, Nike could pull it off again. A brand, outside of the outdoor industry could pull it off with the assistance of an athlete and a big moment. And gosh, I just don't know. Like, I don't know the answer to this, but like, have we seen the end of monoculture with the end of the Eras Tour, or do you think an athlete could bring it back? Like, think back to like Be Like Mike or the Dan and Dave. Remember the Olympic, like the two sprinter guys that were against each other? Like, there have been moments in sporting where you could not avoid. Or Bo Knows, that campaign completely took over everyone in and out of sports. Is it possible for a brand and an athlete to bring back monoculture? Not saying it's good or bad, but like, could it still be done in 2025 or beyond?
Maybe Second Nature can be the ultimate unifier of the entire outdoor industry. Monoculture, the industry. No, I think like the NFL is the only thing that comes close to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Something that, people across socioeconomic, political, religious backgrounds all find entertainment value and passionate fan engagement for Taylor Swift and, your given NFL team. It's hard to think of another example, though, isn't it?
Yeah, in recent times, absolutely. If you go back, you can see them relatively easy. But
there used to be where movies, right? You'd have multiple movies a year that had that monoculture feeling. The first thing that came to mind, I don't know why, is the Titanic, right? I think by ticket sales is probably still one of the biggest movies of all time. But I remember I was in like 6th grade or something going to the theaters with and it was not only kids like me wanting to see it, but our parents wanting to see it too. And I don't know. You don't have that on the content side as much, like, especially with music, we should say,
Yeah, everything has been so specialized, and there are people that are like sort of quietly famous, right? Like, you have a giant following, but actually, like, most people have no idea who you are.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like,
I've been actually listening to. I haven't watched the new Bob Dylan movie, but I can't wait to. That's who I was named after, Lucy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
But I've been listening to some stuff about Timothy Chalamet, and it feels like he has the potential to be one of these people because of the way they were talking about how he's approached the promotion of the film, going on College Game Day, for example, as this sort of like Hollywood artist, and also having competent and well articulated football takes, and being able to speak to that audience, and then like going on, I think he was on like Theo Vaughn's podcast. So like, as we're seeing with the evolution of media, instead of doing a film tour where he's talking to a bunch of the Hollywood press, right? He's going on Theo Vaughn, and he's BSing with Pat McAfee on College Game Day. It's like kind of interesting. And it feels like that Bob Dylan movie might be a monoculture type film that would appeal to people from a bunch of different backgrounds. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Timothy, if you're listening, we'd happily have you on Second Nature.
Come on. Come on. I was named after Bob Dylan. You got to come on the show.
I think there's like a really interesting thing to explore when it comes to people outside of the outdoor industry who are passionate about the sports. Like, there are plenty of Hollywood people that are probably super into trail running, right? I think the only person who's really even scratched the surface in this category is Rich Roll, where he's gotten some people to come in and be like, oh yeah, I trail run, or I do this, or I do that.
Yep.
but like the collaborations that could go down. Actually, you know what? Reggie Miller is super into mountain biking too.
Yep.
So there are some people who are like super famous outside of the outdoor industry that love the sports that we love. And I'd love to see more collaborations in that category because I think it's like really authentic and meaningful, and also could lend some like major eyeballs to really cool projects that are happening in our space.
Well, a little teaser. We may see something in this vein with Speedland next year. Speedland collab with a different type of athlete, shall we say. But moving on, that being our honorable mentions, Taylor Swift and Timothy Chalamet, your honorable mention athletes of the year in the outdoor industry. Wow, we really went down a little rabbit hole there. Hey, let's do a quick Galaxy Brain of the year, because there's been some rumors that I want to tell you about. Okay, number one, first of all, your Galaxy Brain, Brand Camp, unequivocally Galaxy Brain of the year on Second Nature, and loved the episode that you did with the Futurist Project about what they're doing, kind of achieving a similar goal. But my Galaxy Brain of the Patreon for outdoor athletes might be coming to fruition in a way that will potentially make big waves.
Wow.
So there are rumors that OnlyFans is signing athletes.
Well, they've had a mountain biker for a while, Stefan Garlicki.
Okay, so this isn't news to you, but I mean, this is the concept, right? OnlyFans probably trying to diversify out of the content that they're most associated with, and to provide a platform to allow people with a following to monetize their audience without necessarily the backing of a big corporate brand.
Yeah.
So it's potentially that the Galaxy Brain of the Year, my idea, Patreon for outdoor athletes, might be in process through OnlyFans and their platform already.
Yeah. Can I break your brain a little bit?
Break.
The previous CEO of OnlyFans worked with me at Red Bull. So she has had a front row seat for how athletes interact with media and brand and everything like that. And so I think that a lot of the insights that they are probably working through right now are based on what she learned at Red Bull.
Yep.
Just saying.
Okay. Brain broken. We can move off that. I just wanted to squeeze that in as a Galaxy Brain of the Year as part of the NACHI Awards. It could be that my premonition that this was a good idea will materialize in 2025. So as announcements are made, as I expect them to be in the next couple of months, maybe we can break them down further here on the podcast. Should we move to like wins and losses personally, and before we wind down?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. You want to go first?
You want me to start with wins, losses, both? What do you think?
I mean, you probably pair them together, right?
Yeah, I think, I think what I want to say, my wife, Kara, gave me this really good insight. We both listened to the Jesse Isler podcast on My First Million a couple weeks ago. And
Harmony and I bought the big calendar they talked about. Should arrive today, actually, I think.
Very cool. I don't think he talked about this on that podcast, but Kara was like really into a lot of the stuff that he was saying, and he'd been on a couple other podcasts that she'd listened to. And Jesse had this concept of the first pancake that really kind of made a lot of sense for me. Let me break this down for you and see if this resonates with you as well as it did with me. But when you make pancakes, right? The first round of pancakes that you make never really turns out how you think it's going to turn out.
Yeah, they're always a dud.
Burnt, or they're kind of stuck to the pan a little bit. It just never really works out. But then you pour the next round of pancakes and they come out perfect. And then the round after that's even better. By the time you run out of batter, like you've just made a mountain of epic pancakes, right? How I think about 2024 for me was the first pancake. I burned the pancakes.
God, I love you, dude. This is so good. Keep going. Let them cook. Let them cook.
I definitely, a win for me would be that I quit my job and went full time into making content. But also a loss for me is that I quit my job and I had to start worrying about how I was making money Whereas before, content creation, if I didn't feel like making a video, it didn't matter. It was like free money. If I did get paid, it was no big deal if I didn't get paid for making content. And so it put a level of strain and stress on myself, not necessarily, on a wider sense, but just like I wanted to like prove to myself that I could make this happen. And I remember my friend Seth was talking to me, not Seth Alpha, a different Seth, but he was talking to me. He's a consultant and does a bunch of other marketing stuff. And he was like, yeah, it took me about a year to figure it out. And I remember thinking like, I got this, dude. I've already got a running start with my channel. Like I know what I'm doing. Like it's not going to take me a year. And now I'm like rounding the corner, I've got a couple months left of the year. And I'm like, yeah, I think he was right. It's going to take me about a year before I really truly understand how this is supposed to work. And just like I was talking about earlier with this like brand versus business, like the things that I've done to create brand with both Super Rider and, what we've done with Second Nature have been, I think, spot on. But the business of both is, sort of still in the underpants gnome phase of like step one.
It's still the first pancake.
Yeah. Yes. So I think 2025 for me is going to be a lot more making pancakes, and it's going to make a lot more sense. And I'm going to have a better sense of like what I actually need to do in terms of just like making everything make sense and also make it sustainable. Where I used 24 in, if I'm critical of myself, but also complimentary of myself, I used that time in 2024 to burn the pancakes intentionally, to figure out what was going to work and what wasn't going to work and what I needed to do to be successful. I am really good at not giving up on stuff and continuing to just be consistent, because in my experience, the more consistent I am, eventually something becomes obvious and I either test and learn and go do something else, or I've done it long enough that, yeah, I just have to keep going because now it is successful. And I think that 2024 was a really important learning year. I thought that I was going to be successful in 2024. By most accounts from like a business side, I wasn't, but also I did a lot in 2024 that I think set up long-term success. And that ultimately is more important. If you can withstand a year of, rebuilding and burning pancakes, it's worth it.
I mean, it's 100% necessary, and I've been telling you this since the very beginning.
It's
be
hard
prepared. It's gonna take longer than you think.
It's hard to be bad at stuff, like
you have seasoned the skillet, though, Lutzy. You are going to have a tall stack of delicious flapjacks with organic butter and all-natural Canadian maple syrup by the time we record the Nate Cheese in 2025. That's my prediction.
I look forward to fulfilling that for sure.
Do you want to do the win as a compliment to this, or was it sort of built into your answer there?
I think it's like one of those things where it's sort of built in terms of it will be a win. It's just like you go down to go up, and
right.
And so I've sort of taken an L to prepare myself for a W. And I think what has helped me.
Dude, you did not take an L, man. You're freaking seasoning the skillet, bro.
Yeah. There's really not anything. Again, there's no rules. There is no win or loss necessarily, but I do think that I've had to, I've kind of joked with Kara that this is like our NBA rebuilding year where we just like dismantle everything and start over to make it way better. And I think it will be.
Yeah.
But we definitely took a step back.
It's like the Warriors. It's like, all right, you still got Steph Curry. What are the pieces we got to put around Aaron Lutzy to get the pancakes going?
I have a really good idea of like where I need to go and what I need to do. And now this year, it's just about actually making that come through.
So. Well, you're the king of execution. So if you have a good idea of where you need to go, then look out, universe. Aaron Lutzy is coming. All right. Well, great, dude. Well, it's easy to be overly self-critical of ourselves. And I think that's really the theme of my wins and losses of 2024. And so just want to say to you, you're crushing it, dude. And it does take courage to leave the job that you did and to go out on your own. And yeah, it's hard as hell. And there's so many question marks. And I have been there too, as you know, and as you've coached me through yourself. So this is the time for the tables to turn for me to let you know, hey, bro, it's going to be all good. All right. So for me, 2024, I put up a post about this on Instagram the other day, and I rarely use my own Instagram account anymore. But what a weird year for me. Free Trail is unequivocally successful, and I should I'm finally allowing myself to be more proud of that fact and to finally acknowledge that fact. Lucy, you know the size of our business now, but it's kind of crazy and it's kind of amazing. And I am the type of person who instead focuses on, well, what if this happens? Oh, well, this is kind of fake, or like this doesn't really count. I'm anyway, my loss of the year is that I allowed myself to really get it very, very down on myself and on my business. I don't think it was anything more serious than just like very severe burnout. I have been seasoning the skillet myself for 3+ years and building our business from the ground up, from zero, totally bootstrapped, put a ton of my own money into the business. In fact, the majority of my life savings into the business. And 2024 was the year that it actually is really paying off. I have like objectively never been more successful in my life, but I was
Shoot.
also never, ever in my life more burnt out, unhappy, unsatisfied. And I don't know, the obvious contradiction in that, the objective reality of my life and the feeling of my life was very, very hard to deal with. And you have been my right hand man trying to figure this out. And, I have to say, like, obviously starting Second Nature at a time when Free Trail was like really taking off is not easy. And that's why, as I've repeated a million times, like, I really believe in what we're doing here and I love it, love it, love it. But frankly, you've had to shoulder most of the work burden because Free Trail has really been, it's just been, it's weighed on me a lot, both in terms of workload and just in terms of mental and emotional bandwidth. And coming around to my wins, number one, yeah, we're crushing it. Thank God. And looking forward to 2025, we expect to crush it as much or hopefully even more. Like maybe we can grow some more, which is going to be a fun project to try and figure out. But I pretty much punched out for the last 3 weeks. I've basically not worked for 3 weeks. I've never done that in my life, let alone on Free Trail. It's been a 7-day a week grind for me for 4 years. And I finally allowed myself to rest. And holy shit, I feel so much better. Part of that rest, as you know, Aaron, as I posted about on Instagram, I went and did a retreat called the Hoffman Process. Their headquarters, the retreat center, is only about 20 minutes away from my house here in NorCal. And holy shit, was it the most amazing and powerful, cathartic experience of my life. And I'll spare you the details, but I think more than anything, it helped me to understand like why I push so freaking hard on everything that I do,
Mm-hmm.
and to be a little bit more forgiving of myself and not and approach it with the infinite game mindset. Because I think what I did is I see the writing on the wall of my athletic career coming to a close. It was like panic trying to like, okay, I know what the next thing is. Instead of the scoreboard being trying to win races or finish on the podium or be affiliated with certain brands, the new scoreboard is build the biggest possible business I can, get wealthy, yada, 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 without really acknowledging or coming to peace with, just who I am aside from being an athlete or owning a business or even being a father and a husband. And what the Hoffman process allowed me to do is just really tune back in with the Debo, and not be so caught up in the baggage of what I had been so stressed out about of like, is this successful? What does this say about me if we fail or if we're successful? To really like approach it more from, do I enjoy what I'm doing? And that was, I think, one of the biggest realizations is like, I think this Hoffman program is the type of thing where you could easily leave and quit your job the next day, or even like, walk away from your marriage or your partnership. Like it strips you down. It really helps you. There's nowhere to hide from yourself and from
Yeah.
the life that you've created. And it really, the comforting thing is understanding that, no, this is actually what I want to do. You know, this is, I hope, going to be my life's work, both with Free Trail and with Second Nature. And I love doing it. And I feel like I have a natural aptitude for the things that I'm doing. And when, you know, sort of your natural talents coincide with how you make your living, like what could be better? And why can't you allow yourself to actually enjoy it? So anyway, that's my long-winded answer to the wins and losses for the year. Losses of very hard year emotionally, really bad physical, mental health for a lot of the year, and win being, you know, finally understanding and enjoying the success that we've had, and hopefully tuning into that a little bit more can help us be more successful. Which actually brings up one last thing. I'm sorry, Aaron. As a teaser to our audience here, people who are familiar with Free Trail, one of the crazy things that came out of Hoffman, of course, the whole week I'm off the grid, no phone, no internet, have no idea what's going on in the outside world. And of course, there's like some anxiety about work and what's coming up. We've got our Trail Runner of the Year award, like voting's closing. I'm not there. You know, what if something's going wrong with the vote, whatever. Coming out of it, of course, everything's totally fine. And beyond that, Travis, our other partner, who I don't know if I've ever mentioned here on the podcast, but we should maybe even have him on as a guest. He's the person who developed our fantasy trail running platform and our Trail Runner of the Year voting platform. He built a new thing, a new digital thing that has the potential to be a watershed piece of IP for Free Trail while I was away. So metaphorically, it feels like kind of like a poetic thing of like, just get the psychopath Debo out of the picture for a week, and Travis can come up with a new invention that could eventually could potentially change the trajectory of our business, at least like to a, you know, minor degree, but potentially to a very significant degree.
That's
anyway,
so cool.
That's my my personal wins and losses.
The return of Debo. I'm so happy to have you back, man. That call, like right when you got back, was such a cool moment because, yeah, I've been there with you through so many of these rough moments that you've had this year. And to hear it in your voice that like you're back was such an amazing feeling, and that you had sort of the tools, the framework to really understand like what it is you need to do moving forward. That was a really big moment, I think, for your development. And I'm really excited for you. You know, like you've done so much to get to this point. And like I said to you one time last year, I'm like, man, if we can't be happy talking about the things that we love, like we're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like now, you know, you're back to the Debo that we know and love. And man, like I hope that, you know, I saw the post that you put up and I read a bunch of the comments, like hopefully you're in a place where you could really appreciate all the stuff that people were saying, because there's a lot of people here that really love you, man. Myself included.
Thank you, bro. Yeah. Well, yeah, the I guess the challenge is carrying what I learned forward, right? And that's the goal of 25. And so far, so good. 7 days into the new year.
Let's get it. Let's go.
But yeah, I got to say too, because I've obviously tuned into all the episodes that I've missed, but I'm very excited about Second Nature. Like this is a thing. It's a thing. Like I feel it. I know you feel it. The feedback that I get, like when I'm out and about in the world, is humbling, and it makes me excited to keep pushing this boulder up the hill with you, dude. And yeah, I heard that like the Galaxy brand that you guys had in the predictions about, you know, could this actually be a business? We kind of need it to be eventually. So we'll see. That I think is certainly on the radar for 2025 also. And it's going to be fun to work on it together.
Yeah, watch this space.
Anything else before we wind down there, bro?
Man, we got through a lot, actually. I feel like Nachi's round one, not terrible. That was pretty good.
So how do you spell Nachi's? Maybe
I don't know.
Let's establish that.
I got the show notes here. I have no idea. I just
I've got a doc open here, just trying to mess with how you would spell Nachis. We'll work on that. But
Yeah.
Sekis, is Sekis a better award
You,
show name?
you can't have an award show called The Seconds, obviously. We'll just call it TBD.
Yeah.
And then the little trophy emoji.
Yeah. It could just be the natures, like the Oscars or something like that. But I don't know. That doesn't feel right either.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to lean on Slack for this one, I think.
All right. Which is a perfect way to close things out. If you're not in Slack, what are we, over 450 people in Slack now?
Yeah, big week. We hit 450 on Slack and 1,000 on the newsletter.
Hell yeah.
No big deal.
Hell yeah. So go to the show notes of today's episode, jump in Slack, great place to network with other people. I'm just waiting for the first Galaxy Brain new business partnership to be found in the Second Nature Slack channel. So go find your business partner in Second Nature Slack and start building something in the industry. Also, we're open to like podcast topics. There's great discussions that evolve in there that often we pull into the episodes here. So if you see something that's happening in the space that we should be talking about or that should garner the attention of the Second Nature community, make sure you get in Slack. Sign up for the newsletter, secondnature.media. Follow us on LinkedIn, especially. Just search Second Nature Media on LinkedIn. Also Instagram, secondnature.media also is our handle there. For Aaron Luzzi, I'm Debo. 2025, let's go!